There's a voice inside each of us, quiet, persistent, and often uninvited. It whispers when we're about to take a risk, shouts when we fail, and questions us even when we succeed. That voice says, "You're not ready, you're not enough, or you could have done better." We all know that voice. It's called the inner critic. Most of us see it as the enemy, the nagging sound that fuels self-doubt, anxiety, and hesitation. But what if your inner critic isn't trying to destroy you? What if, beneath its harsh tone, it's actually trying to protect you? What if it's not a foe, but a misunderstood friend? Let's rewind for a moment. Your inner critic was born the day you first felt fear, rejection, or embarrassment. Maybe someone laughed at you when you made a mistake, or you were told to be realistic when you dreamed too big. That moment planted a seed, and that seed grew into a voice designed to keep you safe, to protect you from future pain. So when your inner critic tells you not to speak up, it's not because it hates you, it's because it remembers how it felt to be ignored. When it tells you not to try, it's because it wants to shield you from disappointment. It's just misguided love without trust. The problem begins when we give that voice too much authority. We treat it as truth instead of what it really is, fear in disguise. The inner critic thrives in silence, in the moments when we don't challenge it. The more we obey, the louder it gets. But the moment you question it, the moment you respond, its power begins to fade. Try this the next time your inner critic says, "You're not good enough." Don't argue or suppress it. Instead, ask, "Why do you feel that way?" You'll notice that voice has reasons, and most of them are outdated, rooted in moments long past. That awareness turns criticism into conversation. You begin to understand that the voice is not a monster, it's a messenger. And here's the truth. Your inner critic can actually become your greatest coach if you learn how to translate its message. When it says, "You'll fail," hear, "Prepare better." When it says, "You're not ready," hear, "Grow a little more." When it says, "You can't handle this," hear, "You need support." The words may sting, but the wisdom underneath can strengthen you. It's all about interpretation, because you are the interpreter of your own thoughts. The secret is not to silence your inner critic, but to retrain it. Teach it a new language, one built on kindness, curiosity, and courage. Instead of saying, "I'm a failure," say, "I'm learning." Instead of saying, "I can't do this," say, "I'll figure it out." Instead of saying, "I always mess up," say, "I'm growing every time I try." Every gentle word reshapes that inner voice into something wiser, a voice that guides you instead of guilts you. The truth is, your inner critic and your inner creator are two sides of the same coin. One warns you, the other inspires you. You need both. Without the critic, you'd repeat your mistakes. Without the creator, you'd never dare to dream. Balance them, and you master yourself. So, is your inner critic a friend or a foe? That depends on how you listen. If you let it control you, it becomes a prison guard. But if you learn from it, it becomes a personal mentor, honest, raw, and surprisingly wise. Remember, that voice isn't there to break you. It's there to make you pay attention, to think, to improve, and to rise. Don't silence it. Don't fear it. Understand it. Because when you finally learn to lead that voice, you'll realize something powerful. Your inner critic was never your enemy. It was your most misunderstood teacher. The origins of the inner critic, born from protection, not punishment. Your inner critic didn't appear out of nowhere. It wasn't born to destroy your confidence or sabotage your dreams. It was born to protect you from rejection, from humiliation, from pain. The problem is, what started as protection has slowly turned into limitation. Think back to your earliest memories of failure or embarrassment. Maybe you raised your hand in class and gave the wrong answer. Maybe you tried something brave, a performance, a confession, a creative idea, and someone laughed. That single moment of emotional pain planted a seed deep in your subconscious. And from that seed grew a voice. At first, it whispered, "Don't do that again." Later, it started to say, "Don't try at all." That's how the inner critic is born, not as an enemy, but as a protector that doesn't know when to stop protecting. The truth is, your inner critic is not cruel by nature. It's cautious. It remembers your past struggles more vividly than your past victories. It has one mission: to keep you safe, even if that means keeping you small. It's like a nervous friend who holds you back before you jump, whispering you might fall. But in doing so, it forgets something vital: you also might fly. Imagine a small child learning to walk. They fall, they cry, and their brain registers danger. The next time they stand, a little voice says, "Be careful." That's the beginning of self-protection. As we grow older, that same mechanism follows us into our adult challenges, our relationships, careers, and dreams. But what once saved us from physical harm now tries to save us from emotional discomfort. The result: we hesitate, we overthink, we avoid, we mistake discomfort for danger. And that's the real tragedy, not that the voice exists, but that we believe it without question. Your inner critic feeds on two things: fear and familiarity. It wants to keep you where things are predictable, even if that place is unfulfilling, because predictability feels safe and the unknown feels risky. So when you consider a bold idea, a new job, a deeper relationship, or a leap of faith, that voice rises and says, "Don't." Not because you can't, but because you might change. And change threatens the illusion of control that your inner critic depends on. But here's the deeper truth: your inner critic is not your enemy. It's your misguided ally. It's a voice that loves you but doesn't trust your strength yet. It thinks you're still that same vulnerable version of yourself, the one who got hurt, who failed, who was told no. It doesn't realize how much you've grown since then, and that's where your power begins: when you start educating your inner critic. When you can look inward and say, "I know you're trying to protect me, but I can handle this now." That's the turning point. That's when fear becomes feedback. Every time you step forward despite the noise, your critic learns something new. It learns that mistakes don't destroy you, that failure isn't fatal, that discomfort is a sign of growth, not danger. Slowly, the tone changes from "don't do it" to "do it carefully," and eventually to "you've got this." Because your inner critic isn't meant to disappear. It's meant to evolve. It's a compass, but you must recalibrate it. So the next time that familiar voice rises, don't fight it. Listen, thank it, then lead it. Say, "I hear you, but I'm not afraid to live boldly." Because the moment you stop treating your inner critic as an enemy, it starts to work for you, not against you. It becomes a silent partner in your growth, no longer shouting from fear, but whispering with wisdom. And that, right there, is the first step in transforming self-doubt into self-mastery. Learning to listen without believing, mastering the inner conversation. The loudest battles you'll ever fight won't happen in the outside world. They'll happen in your own mind. That's where your inner critic lives, and it's relentless. It comments on your every move. "You shouldn't have said that." "You're not qualified." "You're wasting your time." Most people spend their lives trying to do one of two things with that voice: obey it or silence it. Some surrender completely, letting it dictate their choices, keeping them locked in fear and hesitation. Others fight it endlessly, trying to drown it out with affirmations, distractions, or denial. But here's the truth: neither approach works. You cannot outshout your inner critic, and you cannot outrun it, because it's not an external enemy, it's a part of you. So what's the answer? You learn to listen without believing. Listening without believing is an act of inner wisdom. It means you give your critic space to speak, but not the power to decide. You treat it like background noise on a radio station. You hear it, but you don't let it control the volume of your life. Imagine for a moment that your inner critic is a scared child sitting in the corner of your mind. It's pointing out all the dangers it can see, even imaginary ones. You don't scream at the child to be quiet. You don't hand over the steering wheel either. You kneel down, listen, and then gently say, "Thank you, but I've got this." That's what emotional maturity sounds like. That's what inner mastery feels like. When you stop believing every word your critic says, you start to discover something powerful. Not every thought that enters your mind is the truth. Thoughts are not commands. They're suggestions, and you get to choose which ones to follow. When the critic says, "You're not good enough," that's not a fact, that's a fear. When it says, "You can't handle this," that's not truth, that's a test of faith. When it says, "You'll fail," that's not prophecy, it's a plea for preparation. Listening without believing turns your inner critic from a dictator into a dialogue partner. It gives you space to pause between hearing and reacting, and in that pause lies your freedom. Let's be honest, that voice will never fully disappear. You will always hear echoes of doubt, especially when you're on the edge of growth. In fact, the louder your inner critic becomes, the closer you probably are to something meaningful. It's your mind's way of saying, we're stepping into the unknown. So instead of fighting that voice, question it. When it says you can't, ask why not. When it says you're not ready, ask what would make me ready. And when it says you'll embarrass yourself, ask, or will I inspire someone? Questions disarm the critic. They turn fear into curiosity, and curiosity is far more powerful than doubt. Listening without believing doesn't mean ignoring your inner critic. It means decoding it. Beneath the harsh tone is often valuable information. Maybe it's pointing out that you need more preparation, rest, or clarity. When you listen without judgment, you can use that feedback constructively. Remember this, your inner critic speaks the loudest when your confidence is quiet. So build a new habit, respond with compassion, replace panic with presence, say to yourself, I hear you, but I choose differently. Because power doesn't come from silencing your mind, it comes from leading it. The moment you realize that you are not your thoughts, you are the thinker, your relationship with your inner critic changes forever. You stop reacting and start responding. You stop running from fear and start walking through it with grace. So the next time that voice rises, don't run and don't bow. Just listen, breathe, question, choose. That's how you transform your inner critic from a master into a messenger, and your mind from a battlefield into a classroom of growth. Turning your critic into a coach, transforming self. Doubt into direction. The most profound transformation happens not when you silence your inner critic, but when you retrain it. You see, your critic isn't broken, it's just using the wrong language. It doesn't need to be silenced, it needs to be translated. Behind every harsh word it speaks is a hidden message. The problem is that we hear the sting, not the substance. Think of your inner critic as an unpolished coach, one that's clumsy with words, but sharp with insight. It doesn't say, I care about your growth. It says, you messed up again. It doesn't say, prepare better next time. It says, you're not good enough. Its delivery is cruel, but its intention at its core is to help you survive, improve, and succeed. The magic begins when you stop taking its tone personally and start extracting the wisdom beneath it. That's how you turn your critic into a coach. Let's reframe some of its favorite lines. When it says you'll fail, what it really means is you need a stronger plan. When it says you're not ready, it's hinting there's still more to learn. When it says you're not good enough, it's reminding you there's room to grow. Every critical thought has a constructive twin, and it's your job to find it. That's how wisdom is extracted from self-doubt. But here's the catch. Transformation doesn't happen by accident. You must practice conscious translation. Every time that inner voice attacks, pause. Instead of reacting emotionally, respond intelligently. Ask, what could this voice be trying to teach me? The moment you do that, you shift from being a victim of your thoughts to a student of your thoughts. Your critic says, you're not good at this. You respond, all right, what skill do I need to build? Your critic says, you failed again. You reply, then what lesson was I meant to learn? That is emotional alchemy, turning mental poison into personal power. Think of the best coaches in life, teachers, mentors, leaders. They push you, challenge you, and sometimes frustrate you. They don't exist to make you comfortable. They exist to make you capable. Your inner critic plays that same role, but only when you teach it how to coach with purpose instead of punishment. When you shift from self-criticism to self-coaching, you unlock a deeper level of growth. Because now, your energy isn't wasted fighting yourself, it's redirected toward building yourself. You stop drowning in guilt and start swimming in improvement. Imagine facing a failure, and instead of spiraling into shame, you ask, what went wrong? What can I do better next time? That's how professionals think. That's how leaders evolve. And that's how you build an inner environment that fosters growth instead of fear. Of course, there will be days when your inner critic gets loud again, days when you feel unworthy, uncertain, or overwhelmed. That's okay. Don't fight those moments. Just remember, that voice is not the enemy. It's a mirror. It shows you what still needs healing, learning, or strengthening. When you treat it like feedback instead of failure, you start to appreciate its presence. Because without it, you'd never refine your craft, sharpen your instincts, or strengthen your resilience. The real victory isn't silencing your inner critic, it's transforming it into a trusted inner guide. A voice that doesn't say, "You're not good enough," but instead says, "Let's try again." So, the next time that voice rises in judgment, respond with leadership. Say, "I hear you. Thank you for the warning. Now let's make it useful." Because the critic inside you isn't a curse, it's a compass. It points out where you need to grow. And once you learn to translate its message with compassion and clarity, you'll realize something powerful. Your critic was never against you. It was simply waiting for you to listen differently. The inner dialogue that defines you, rewriting the story you tell yourself. If thoughts are the architects of your reality, then your inner dialogue is the blueprint. Every single day, you're in constant conversation with yourself, narrating, judging, predicting, and labeling. And this quiet conversation is more powerful than you realize, because the words you whisper to yourself become the foundation of how you see the world and how you see you. Your inner critic doesn't just shape your emotions, it shapes your identity. The tone of your inner voice determines whether you walk through life with courage or with caution. If that voice constantly says, "You're not enough," then no amount of external validation will fill the emptiness. But if it says, "You are learning, growing, and capable," the world begins to reflect that truth back to you. Here's something profound. Your mind listens to everything you tell it without questioning whether it's true or false. If you tell yourself, "I can't," your brain stops looking for ways you can. If you tell yourself, "I'm not good at this," your brain stops trying to get better. But when you say, "I'm figuring this out," your brain goes to work finding solutions. This is the science of self. Your thoughts literally rewire your brain through repetition. What you say to yourself every day builds neural pathways that either empower or imprison you. And that means you have a choice. You can keep repeating the story that limits you, or you can start telling the one that lifts you. Let's take a moment to be honest. Most of us are far more compassionate to others than we are to ourselves. If a friend failed, you'd say, "It's okay, you'll do better next time." But when you fail, your critic shouts, "How could you be so stupid?" The difference isn't in the situation, it's in the tone of your self-dialogue. To transform your inner critic, you must transform your inner tone. Start speaking to yourself with the same kindness you would offer to someone you love, not with empty positivity, but with grounded compassion. Instead of "I can't believe I messed up," say, "I learned something valuable today." Instead of "I'm not where I should be," say, "I'm exactly where I need to be to grow." Each time you replace judgment with understanding, your inner critic learns a new way to communicate, and your self-trust begins to grow. Because that's what this transformation is really about, trust. The critic was born when trust was broken, when failure felt final, when rejection felt defining, when mistakes felt shameful. Healing begins when you rebuild that trust within yourself. When you trust your ability to recover, your inner dialogue becomes gentler. You stop saying, "I'm not enough," and start saying, "I'm becoming." You stop asking, "Why me?" and start asking, "What is this teaching me?" That's how your words turn from weapons into wisdom. And here's the most empowering truth. Your outer world mirrors your inner world. The way you speak to yourself silently becomes the way you present yourself publicly. Confident self breeds confident energy. Calm self breeds resilience. Your tone with yourself sets the emotional temperature of your life. So, ask yourself, what story am I telling myself right now? Is it one of fear, limitation, and shame, or one of courage, progress, and compassion? because you are not defined by the voice of your critic. You are defined by the voice you choose to believe. When you consciously rewrite your inner dialogue, you rewrite your destiny. The critic's voice may never vanish, but its words will lose their power when your compassion grows louder. So, the next time your mind turns against you, pause and reframe. Speak with intention. Remind yourself, I am human, I am learning, I am growing. Because the story you tell yourself every day isn't just a story, it's the script of your life. And when you begin to speak with self-respect, your inner critic finally learns to speak the language of self-worth. The final realization you are both the critic and the creator in the grand dialogue of your mind. There are two voices that shape your destiny, the critic and the creator. One questions, the other imagines. One fears, the other dreams. Most people spend their entire lives battling between these two inner forces, never realizing the truth that could set them free. You are both. The inner critic says, you can't do it. The creator responds, let's try anyway. The critic warns, it's too risky. The creator whispers, but what if it works? The tension between the two isn't a flaw, it's the very essence of your growth. Without the critic, you'd act recklessly. Without the creator, you'd never act at all. The balance between them is what makes you human. But here's where most people go wrong. They identify only with one side. They either drown in self-criticism, letting fear control every move, or they ignore reality completely, chasing dreams without reflection. Real power comes when you integrate both sides, when you realize that your critic isn't your enemy and your creator isn't your escape. They are both trying in their own ways to help you live wisely. The critic's role is to protect. The creator's role is to expand. Together, they build resilience and vision. One keeps your feet on the ground, the other helps your heart take flight. Think of a sculptor and a chisel. The creator is the sculptor full of ideas, passion, and imagination. The critic is the chisel sharp, precise, and sometimes painful. Without the sculptor, the chisel is useless. Without the chisel, the sculptor's vision remains trapped in marble. Creation requires both the dreamer and the doubter working in harmony. So, what does this harmony look like in real life? It looks like inner leadership. It's when you can hear your critic say, this might not work, and calmly reply, then let's improve it. It's when your creator says, let's chase this dream, and your critic adds, let's plan wisely. When those two voices collaborate instead of collide, you move from conflict to command. Mastery isn't about silencing parts of yourself. It's about orchestrating them. Just like a conductor doesn't eliminate instruments, but unites them in rhythm, you must learn to unite your inner voices in balance. The critic becomes your quality checker, the creator becomes your visionary. And you, the conscious self, become the leader who decides which voice leads and when. Here's a truth to remember. Your inner critic only gains power when you forget that you are the one listening. You are not the voice that doubts. You are the awareness that hears it. The moment you realize this, you step out of mental chaos and into clarity. You stop reacting to your thoughts and start directing them. In that moment, the war inside you ends. You understand that both the critic and creator are expressions of one deeper self, a self that wants to live meaningfully, truthfully, and fully. So instead of fighting your inner critic, thank it for keeping you cautious. Thank your creator for keeping you courageous, and thank yourself for being the bridge between the two. Because when the critic and creator work together, you don't just survive, you thrive. You become grounded yet fearless, disciplined yet imaginative, realistic yet hopeful. You become the artist and the editor of your own life. That's the final realization. The critic's doubts and the creator's dreams are both part of your inner intelligence. You don't need to choose between them, you just need to lead them. So, the next time that inner voice rises to judge or to dream, smile, because now you know both voices belong to you. And when you learn to balance their dialogue, you unlock the full symphony of your potential. In the end, your inner critic isn't your enemy, and your creator isn't your savior. They are two halves of the same power. The one who questions and the one who imagines, working together to shape the masterpiece called you. The silent partnership within. As we reach the end of this exploration, let's pause for a moment and take a deep breath. Think about all the times your inner critic spoke up, all the times it stopped you right before you took a bold step, all the times it whispered, "Not yet," "Not good enough," or "Don't try." And now realize this, that voice has been with you your whole life. You never asked for it, yet it's always been there in moments of success and failure, in love and loss, in every decision you've ever made. But through this journey, you've learned something powerful. That voice was never your enemy. It was simply misunderstood. In Keynote 1, we discovered its origin, how it was born from the instinct to protect. It came from a time when you were small, vulnerable, and needed safety. The critic learned to guard you against pain, not realizing that you've grown stronger since then. Its warnings may still echo, but they are echoes of an older version of you. In Keynote 2, we learned the art of listening without believing, the ability to hear that voice without letting it control us. It's not about fighting it, but about observing it with awareness. When you create that gap between what you hear and what you accept, you step into emotional freedom. You realize that thoughts are just visitors, not permanent truths. In Keynote 3, we transformed the critic into a coach. You learned that every harsh word it says hides a useful message. "You'll fail" means prepare better. "You're not ready" means there's more to learn. When you translate fear into feedback, you turn pain into purpose. The critic doesn't disappear, it evolves. In Keynote 4, we looked at the language you use with yourself, the ongoing inner dialogue that defines your confidence, your identity, and your destiny. You understood that your words create your reality. When you replace self-judgment with self-compassion, you don't just change your mood, you change your mind. You become your own source of courage. And in Keynote 5, we reached the ultimate realization. You are not just the critic or the creator, you are both. You are the thinker behind the thought, the leader behind the voices. The critic grounds you, the creator lifts you. The critic prevents recklessness, the creator prevents regret. They are not fighting against you, they are waiting for your guidance. You are the conductor of this inner orchestra, and that's the heart of it all, self-leadership. When you lead your mind instead of obeying it, your inner world changes. When your inner world changes, your outer world begins to follow. The voice that once said, "You can't," begins to whisper, "You can." The one that used to say, "You'll fail," starts to say, "Let's try smarter next time." That shift doesn't happen overnight, but it begins the moment you decide to listen differently. Your inner critic will never vanish completely, and that's okay. You don't want it to. You just want it to grow with you, to evolve from fear to feedback, from doubt to direction. The key is to lead it with compassion, not control. So the next time you hear that inner voice rise, pause. Don't silence it. Don't surrender to it. Simply say, "Thank you for your concern, but I'm choosing courage today." Because courage isn't the absence of self-doubt, it's the decision to move forward in spite of it. Confidence isn't about silencing your critic, it's about befriending it. And growth isn't about erasing that voice, it's about teaching it to speak in new ways. When you embrace your inner critic as a misunderstood ally, you stop fighting yourself and start aligning with yourself. You step into a new kind of strength, one that's not loud or arrogant, but calm, grounded, and sure. In the end, the question isn't whether your inner critic is a friend or foe. The real question is, will you let it lead, or will you lead it? The answer, my friend, decides the quality of your future, because the moment you start leading that voice within, you stop being your biggest obstacle and become your greatest ally.